What's going on, everybody? Matt Malatesta in the podcast room here at VYPE. We got the guest, Mr. Basketball in the city of Houston, Rossi Carron. All right, Rossi, tell me about these two games coming up. Just who's playing and how hard is it to put something together like this?
First of all, thanks for having me.
bet.
It's a great podcast setup that you have here. The Battleground 2K24, November 9th at Toyota Center. It's a college basketball doubleheader. And in the opening game, we're really excited about it because it's two really high-level games we believe in. In the first game, Rice versus Florida State. And then in the second game, Houston versus Auburn, which is a massive game, probably one of the top 5 games in the non-conference schedule. Really excited about it. 2 top 10 teams. Again, November 9th at Toyota Center, college basketball doubleheader.
You were in the grassroots world forever, and it's all relationship. How
100%.
and surely this is how you were able to put this together. But tell the people, like, how do you put something together like this? Is it relationship oriented with all the coaches you've known forever?
I travel across the country and I speak to up and coming students who want to work in the sports marketing or the sports business. And I always tell people, unlike any other industry, like the sports industry is about relationships. It's about networking. It's about not just getting to know people, but adding value to people and allowing people to trust you through your work. So I spent 15 years in grassroots. I was the program director of Basketball University. And, obviously we produced a number of high-level players who have come through the city. And we just finished talking about Quentin Grimes, who's from this area. And at that time, I just had an opportunity, because we had high-level players, to connect with coaches and to build relationships over a 15-year span. So when I got out of it, and at that time, again, I was running grassroots basketball and doing high school events. So it was just a natural transition with relationships and obviously the marketing experience and being connected to athletes and coaches to transition into developing and operating college basketball sporting events. So it's something I'm really excited about doing.
And what's kind of cool is with the NIL opening up, you're kind of in the middle with coaches, players, and companies that want to have to sponsor events like this. So we're at a really wild crossroads of sports marketing. It's taken on a life of its own. But talk about this first game, Rice versus Florida State. New coach at Rice, experienced coach at Florida State, and one of the top teams in the ACC.
It's a great opportunity for Rice University, especially as it pertains to Coach Lanier coming in, setting a new culture, raising expectations. It's a great opportunity for them to get out there and show their fans where the program is headed. As far as Florida State, Coach Leonard Hamilton he'll be a Hall of Fame coach. And athletically, like when they come in, if you're a basketball fan, it's going to be something really special to watch. The size, the length, the athleticism, the toughness. It's going to be a great game, and it's going to be a great opportunity for Rice basketball. So I'm excited for the Houston fans here.
What Kelvin Sampson has done in the city of Houston, I'm old. I love Phi Slama Jama, Guy Lewis, and then it just went dead for decades. He's completely revitalized the city of Houston as it relates to U of H basketball. Everybody's on board, beautiful facilities. And then you got one of the wildest characters in college basketball at Auburn. He's off
Coach
the chain,
Pearl.
man.
Oh,
Pearl
Coach
is off the chain.
We're going to have to have a wrestling match with Coach Sampson and Coach Pearl pregame. But it's what Coach Sampson has done there is unbelievable. And I talk about it all the time, is that I've always been a huge supporter of U of H. And I remember being at games when it was Hawthorne's. And it was empty. Like, I would have a whole section to myself, and I would put my feet up on the chair in front of me. And now it's hard to get in the building. They sell out almost every game, and he's taken that program from, just University of Houston to, one of the top 5 programs nationally, and it's unbelievable. And I'm glad I was here to kind of watch the ascension of that program.
Just watching it, just the culture. Like, how do you flip a culture like that? And you were a coach and a director, but how does somebody come in, and I'm fascinated with coaches, how they turn something into nothing with their own stamp on it. And now you see they're in the Final Four and they're on the cusp of winning national championships. How does somebody do that?
I think that it's far beyond coaching, because there are a lot of guys who are really good coaches, and there are guys like Kelvin Sampson who are visionaries and CEOs. He basically came in with his vision, worked his plan, and he had an identity as a coach. And I think the best coaches do a great job of instilling their identity on their team. And Coach Pearl is the same way. Like when you watch them play, they play like he coaches. And the same thing with Coach Sampson. So that's going to be a physical game. I joke with Kellen all the time. I say, man, y'all playing tackle football out there.
Yeah.
And that Auburn-Houston game is going to be as physical as it gets. I feel sorry for the referees.
It's an SEC football game wrapped in a basketball game here in the city of Houston.
Yeah.
And what he's done to that, like Auburn was 0.0 on the scale of student interest in basketball. Mm-hmm. You go in that place and it is a zoo. It is wild as it relates to a venue and energy in a building when you go play at Auburn.
They call it the jungle.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's I would say it's probably top 8 or so when you talk about college basketball environments and toughest places to play. I would put it right there, at least top 10 in the country. It's unbelievable what he's done with that program. And this year, I think they have the number one schedule, non-conference schedule in the country. It's unbelievable. So he's trying to take that program from being, one of the best programs in the SEC to being mentioned with, kind of with the blue blood programs. I think that's his goal.
It's a brand. Like everybody's trying to build a brand, and he's doing a great job of it. Talking about Houston, and many years ago, I worked for Rivals and 247 as an evaluator of talent. Mm-hmm. You've seen all of the great players that come through Houston. But as an evaluator of talent, because your name's on the line too when you were back in the day, 100%. You're putting your stamp on somebody to a coach.
100%.
What do you look for the most in a player? Is it length, size, heart? What is it when you're evaluating a kid?
I think you start with some of those assets. Do they have the positional size? Do they have length? Do they have the athleticism? And then people talk about toughness. But as I've kind of seen more players, one of the things I talk about now is like life discipline. And a lot of that comes through family structure. So when I'm evaluating kids or I'm connected with kids or working with athletes in some capacity, I'm looking at the family dynamics. Like, do they have great character? And when I mention life discipline, like, do they have bad habits that can derail them? Are they dedicated to this? Do they love this more than anything? Or, they want to hang out with girls or smoke or drink? And all of those things can ultimately help derail a kid's trajectory. And I think that's one of the things that I'm really looking for is like the character piece, the discipline, the work ethic, and the life discipline.
You're a great person to talk to about NIL just because, at first I was like, man, I'm not that sure. And football has kind of flipped it on its head. You got the money game talking with LSU on Amazon Prime and Livy Dunn, who's like a second string gymnast making $10 million a year. But you said something earlier, like, this is a massive industry as it relates to college and kids. How do you see this maintaining long term?
I think this was inevitable, and I think the NCAA did their best to keep their reins on it. But like they always say, what's the saying? You can't put toothpaste back in the tube. Like
right.
It's out. The industry has changed, and it used to be what the NCAA preached, amateurism. It's no longer amateurism. I like to say it's professional sports with the educational component. And I think it's great for the kids. I think that, anytime there's an industry that's producing revenue, I think everybody across the board should benefit. But the reality is, you run in VYPE sports. There is no VYPE sports without the athletes. There's no Battleground 2K college basketball doubleheader without the athletes. There are no massive, $20 million stadiums and athletic directors if not for the athletes. So I think it's only right that they are able to participate and to participate at a high level. And I'm really excited about where this thing is going from a business standpoint.
And the biggest driver of all of this was the NCAA tournament.
I had a huge part of it, and obviously, obviously football has the biggest impact on alignment and television deals. But as far as kind of saving college basketball, and you talk about the House settlement that is kind of in play now, and it's, for people who are not familiar with it, just really quickly, it's an antitrust lawsuit that the NCAA has agreed to settle, and the NCAA and its members, and it's kind of threefold. It's $2.7 billion in back pay. And because of the statute of limitation, it goes back to 2016. So athletes from 2016 to 2023, I believe, will share in some back pay, $2.7 billion. That's the first component. The second component is revenue share going forward, where institutions are not mandated to, but have the ability to share up to a cap of about $22 billion, which is about 22% of the revenue. And then lastly, they'll have some restrictions and some changes in scholarships and roster sizes, and then some oversight from the NCAA. But it's a massive shift in college sports. And I really feel sorry for a lot of the kids who are in the 2025 class who are going into college, because they're having to make decisions on schools and NIL without understanding the big picture and to see where this settlement will go, because it's supposed to take effect in fall of 25. But I think they'll have some hiccups along the way and some changes along the way.
And the portal is another thing.
Oh,
I mean, the portal is wild. You're portaling up, you're portaling down. And it really kind of hurts the high school kid, because everybody wants to see tape, what you do in college, and whether you're going up or down. How does that just mix up the soup as well?
Depending on who you ask, some people hate the portal. And I look at it as, I would like to see kids have stability, because again, we talked about life discipline. Some of consistency helps you to grow and to maintain. But I also believe in fair market value. It's like, if a coach decides to leave coaching at a mid-major to make more money at a Power 5, and it benefits him and his family, he should do that. And I think that players should have the same opportunities. Now, they need some guidance and some counseling behind moving strategically. I don't think it should be the Wild Wild West, but again, the head of the NCAA at one point was making $8.5 million a year. The athletes should make money.
Right.
Coaches are moving to make money. The athletes should have the opportunity to move if it helps improve their career in some aspect or improve their family life.
All right, so you're from Southeast Texas.
100%. Port Arthur, Texas.
Ooh, they got some basketball over there.
Yep.
When you were growing up, who were kind of your mentors, your idols?
From a mentor standpoint, I mean, our high school coaches helped to kind of shape us. Obviously, Coach James Gamble, who's a legendary coach in Texas, was one of my coaches. And the impact that he not only had on basketball in the Golden Triangle at Port Arthur Lincoln, but across the state of Texas. But from a basketball standpoint, I watched, B.J. Tyler, Brian Saye, Stevie Jackson. Those guys were guys that came before me and really helped to stamp the Port Arthur Lincoln brand. And I got a chance to play with a guy who's, to me, is one of the best players to ever come through the state. Is a guy named Emmanuel McElroy. And if real basketball fans would remember him, he's one of the best players that I've ever played with, or I've ever seen play high school basketball.
City of Houston, it seems like it's down. Explain why people go to the prep schools, because it frustrates the media people, because it's like, oh my gosh, we want to see these guys. They're right here in town, and then they leave. And then it's hard for high school coaches because they don't know who's coming or going. But explain why people are leaving it en masse.
I think early on, 10 years ago, people were leaving because they viewed those prep schools as a better opportunity from a basketball development standpoint. Can I put myself in an environment with players that are on my level, other Division I players? And I think now, because Texas is if not the premier basketball state and one of the premier football states as well, I think that when you see kids leave now, it's less about the competition level and more about the NIL component. Because I believe now there are 11 or 12 states that have not opted in to allow high school athletes to benefit from that name, image, and likeness, and Texas is one of those. So those kids are leaving to go to states where they can benefit from the NIL opportunities as high school athletes. And until we change that, I think we're going to continue to see kids continue to move around.
Yeah, that's crazy, because I was just with the coach doing a big football game, and I'm like, man, this guy's young. Y'all are going to be good for a long time. And he's like, no, if we can hang on to him, because there's other schools from different states that are coming after him that will pay NIL money, which is crazy I mean, this happened so fast. It happened within literally like 18 months. It's happened so
Yeah,
fast.
it's shifted. I laugh all the time because when I was in school, when I played at Niagara University, and the coaches couldn't give you anything. Like if the coach saw you walking down the street, right, and he was driving
Yeah.
by, unless you were going to basketball practice, in theory, according to the rules, he couldn't pick you up. He couldn't give you $20 for a hamburger. And now to see kids have conversations on the phone talking about 500,000 and 800,000 and $1 million deals for NI, I think it's fantastic.
How does somebody from Port Arthur go to Niagara? I mean, what is that culture change like? Just the weather alone.
It's I haven't been back.
That says it all.
Well, it's for me. It helped. I always tell people, some part of college is going to learn, and from an educational standpoint, some of the stuff you learn in college you'll never use, but the experiences you learn of being around other people and other cultures is a huge part of it. So I went to Port Arthur Lincoln. It was probably 99% African American, right? There was one white kid in our graduating class, and he was a really good football player.
Yeah.
When I went to Niagara, it was 6% black. I didn't see that many. I've never seen that many white people in my life.
Right.
So it was a different world. And you talk about going from Texas where it's hot and humid to snow, up to your knees. There would be times when I would wake up in the morning, my bed was right by the window. I would look out the window and I would see snow. I would close the curtains and go back to sleep. I'm like, there's no way I'm going out there. So, but it helped me to grow and evolve as a man, and to be able to identify with and connect with people from other places, and to to navigate the weather. And overall it was a good experience for me as a person.
Outside of you, who was the greatest player that played at Niagara University?
I'm nowhere on that list, but Calvin Murphy.
Calvin
by
Murphy.
Far, he has all of the records.
Yeah.
Like every one of them.
He was so tough. Like he's a little bitty guy, but this dude would knock your block off. Man, I had some buddies that played there. Their dads played at Niagara, and they're like, oh my gosh, he would punch you in the throat. He was so tough. And just a legend. When you say that school, that's what immediately comes to mind.
He is the man. Again, if you go through the record book, let's say there are 30 records, he might have 25 of the 30 records, including like most shots in the game, most points per game. It's unbelievable. And I don't even think they had a 3-point line at that time. So what he would have done with a 3-point line would.
He didn't get his fashion sense from there. That is straight out of Houston, but he got his game from there. So now, Hugh, I'm just gonna lay it out there. Who is? I'm gonna give you a minute to think about it. The top 5 Mount Rushmore athletes for basketball to come out of the city of Houston, but kind of in, let's call it the VYPE era. Let's call 20 years.
Oh man, there's so many good players. I'll just kind of name some guys, probably kind of from recent years. Obviously, Jared Vanderbilt was one of the most highly regarded guys there. De'Aaron Fox, who arguably is probably one of the best 2 or 3 guys to come through the city of Houston. And obviously, we mentioned Quentin Grimes before. When you look at his high school resume and what he accomplished, there are very few guys that have accomplished what he's accomplished. I think obviously you got to throw the Harrison twins in there when you're talking about guys that helped to really like grow the brand of basketball here in Houston. Those would be the guys that would probably initially come to my mind. But obviously there's Tommy Mason Griffin and
he was the biggest thing in that window of time. He was the hottest thing going.
I watched him do an interview, and he was talking about we talked about life discipline.
Yeah.
And he was talking about some of his challenges in college and some things that he would have done differently. You talk about talent level. If it wasn't for those things, he's an NBA point guard, clearly an NBA point guard. So he would be a guy that obviously that I would have on those lists of some of the best guys to ever come.
Word association. Yates High School basketball.
Yates reminded me of what was going on in Port Arthur Lincoln. They were so dominant, and they had a run where just them showing up was worth 10 to 15 points.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I remember like playing at Port Arthur Lincoln. Like when we came, it was like people came from all over the state to watch.
Yeah.
And it was worth 10 points. The other team was down 10 points on the jump ball. And Yates had that same feel, that same run, and that same impact during that window when they were dominating.
They were the wildest team to watch.
Exciting though.
So exciting. Greg Wise, I mean, it was so exciting because, I mean, if you wanted to just be entertained, that was the game to go to.
And it was interesting because we talked about Coach Sampson and Coach Pearl, how animated they are, and those teams took on that idea. Coach Wise was really kind of laid back and super cool, but those guys got after it.
Woo.
They got after. They were flying around and making plays, and you know what he did with that program. You talk about, you know, kind of elevating programs or building culture. He's one of the best, you know, high school basketball coaches that we've probably seen in the last 20 years.
I've been to one of their practices. I think their practices are even better than the games.
There's no out of bounds. They're chasing the balls into
the hallway.
Into the hallway.
Yeah.
But U of H is the same way. If you ever go watch a U of H practice,
yes, there's rough.
There's no out of bounds. But it teaches kids to play through the whistle. And it's like, listen, until you come up with the ball, the play is not over. And you know, that's part of the U of H toughness and get after it and go after it. And again, I take it back to the Battleground 2K. I cannot wait to sit courtside and watch Coach Pearl and Coach Sampson run around, yell at the players, yell at the referees, and their guys are going to really be getting after it on the ground.
You really can't mic those guys up. There's no way you could mic them up.
It would be pure entertainment. pure entertainment. I'm looking forward to it.
What advice would you give to parents now as a kid? Let's call him 7th, 8th grader. This guy, you're thinking, this guy can play. What advice would you give a parent now getting into the basketball world?
It's partly what we built Basketball University on. And Teddy Wheeler was a huge part of that. Shout out to Teddy Wheeler. Is that it was always about development. Like, don't get caught up in the rankings, the travel, the shoes, because at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is, can you step on a college campus and help that coach win games? That's what college coaches care about. They want you to come in so that they can win games, so that they can keep their job or get a better job. And if you ever lose sight of that, you miss it. It's about development. Keep getting better. Keep working on your game. Watch basketball. Go to events like the Battleground 2K so you can see what it really looks like. Because some people have a false sense of, you know, somebody say, hey, man, I want to play at U of H. They should be recruiting me. And then you go watch their practice at the games like, dude, you can't, there's no way you can play with these guys.
That's right.
So I think, you know, watching basketball, going to college practices, going to college games, and having a firm perspective on what it really takes, what it should look like. So if you're in the 7th grade, you're basically telling yourself, in 5 years, this is what I have to look like to get on that floor. And with the transfer portal and NIL, it's really shifted. It's made it really hard for high school guys to get an opportunity to play in college. There was a time where, you know, 27, 28 guys that seniors would go on to play Division I. I think that number is probably cut in half over the last few years. And hopefully now that group of COVID year people have cycled through, that there'll be more opportunities for high school kids to play at the next level. But I would say focus on development, keep getting better, you know, watch the game, soak in the game. It should be a part of something you do every day, because college basketball now is a business, period.
Okay, what did we learn? We learned a lot in 15 minutes, 20 minutes. All right, Rossi, Carron, one of the best in the business. You got to get out to these games. It's going to be great. The energy is going to be great. The competition is going to be great. 4 really, really good games. All right, this is Matt with VYPE. Rossi, Carron. See you at those games.